In a quiet driveway in suburban Ohio, two cars sit side by side every morning. One is a 1995 Mercedes E-Class with paint that has faded into a soft, silver patina. And while the chrome shows the weight of 3 decades, the door still closes with the heavy thud of a bank vault. The neighbor owns the other car, a 2024 luxury SUV that arrived just last month, covered in glass and screens and tied to various subscription services. The question hanging between these two machines is not about sentiment or being old-fashioned. It is an urgent look at why a family with young children would choose a car from the Clinton administration over a brand new model. This choice has nothing to do with nostalgia or a tight budget, and it certainly is not a romantic attachment to the past. It is about what actually keeps a family safe, owning a machine that will not spy on you, and trusting a piece of engineering that will work the same way 20 years from now as it does today. To understand why families are now hunting for 30-year-old luxury cars, we have to look at the moment the industry changed its philosophy. During the 1980s and the 1990s, the directive was simple, and cars were never engineered to be consumables that you threw away after a few years. These were permanent fixtures, over-engineered machines meant to outlast the people who drove them. And luxury back then did not mean more gadgets. It meant redundant systems and mechanical simplicity instead of digital complexity, which is why brands like Mercedes, BMW, and Lexus built cars they expected to run for 300,000 miles without a major failure. This philosophy was not a secret, and it was printed in owner's manuals by engineers who genuinely believed a luxury car should be something you could pass down to your children. By the early 2000s, the economics shifted toward a new business model where planned obsolescence became the standard for every major manufacturer. Modern luxury is now defined by screens and software that become obsolete in 5 years. And while a 1995 Mercedes relies on transparent mechanical systems, a 2024 SUV contains over 100 million lines of code. This creates a massive gap in ownership, because one car can be understood by anyone with a wrench, but the other requires a dealer with proprietary access just to explain why a light is on. Families began noticing this shift quietly at first, when they realized new cars required dealer permission for basic repairs, and even heated seats started demanding monthly payments. Software updates could suddenly brick features that worked perfectly yesterday, and people realized the real cost was not the purchase price, but the ecosystem that owned you after you drove off the lot. Take a heated seat as a simple example. In a 2024 luxury sedan, that feature costs about $10 per month to activate, which means a family paying for heated seats across 2 decades of ownership is looking at $2,400 for the pleasure of sitting on a warm surface. Add in the activation fee, the firmware updates required to unlock it, and the subscription management. A 1995 Mercedes has a heated seat too, but it is just an electrical heating element wired directly to a switch. If it ever fails, you replace the element for $150 and never think about it again. The entire difference between the two cars is not about comfort or technology, it is about who actually owns the feature. Modern luxury means you own nothing except a license to use what you paid for, while older luxury means the machine belongs to you completely. Meanwhile, something unexpected happened in the used market, where 30-year-old luxury cars stopped depreciating, and data showed E-Class models from the 1990s holding stable value, while modern equivalents were cratering. A clean car from 1995 might cost you $10,000 today, but a new one costs $70,000 and loses 40% of that value before you have even made the first loan payment. The shift happened quietly, but families started asking a question the automotive industry was not prepared to answer. They wanted to know if the old way was actually better, not in a romantic sense, but in a practical and measurable way that made sense for their bank accounts. The data began to accumulate as insurance companies noticed that drivers in these older heavy luxury cars were involved in fewer accidents. Repair shops reported that a 1995 Mercedes often spent less time on a lift than a 2024 model, and parts suppliers for these older cars became thriving businesses because demand stayed so high. A family could easily own 3 vintage luxury cars for the price of 1 new SUV. And if one needed work, they had backups ready to go. The math worked without needing nostalgia to explain it, and that realization changed how people thought about what they actually needed from a machine. The real reason families are choosing older luxury cars is not about nostalgia or romance, but something much more immediate and primal. Modern cars are designed to distract you because they are engineered as entertainment platforms, data collectors, and notification delivery systems. They are built to keep your eyes moving between the road and a dozen different screens, splitting your attention between driving and managing digital content. Older luxury cars were designed to do something entirely different, focusing on protection and endurance above all else. They were built so a parent could focus on the road and the child in the back seat, rather than an infotainment system that demands constant engagement. A 1995 Mercedes E-Class has no screens in the cabin, which means there is no digital dashboard pushing information at you and no navigation system requesting your attention every 30 seconds. There is no voice assistant waiting for commands, so the steering wheel, the pedals, and the gear shift remain the only interfaces between you and the machine. When you drive a child to school, you are not fighting a system designed to maximize your engagement time. You are simply driving. That distinction matters more than it sounds, because the psychological space changes, and the cabin becomes a place for conversation instead of a place for distraction management. Visibility is where this philosophical difference becomes physical, as a 1990s sedan was engineered with sightlines as a primary safety feature, rather than an afterthought. These cars featured thin pillars and large windows to provide clear views in every direction, allowing you to see exactly what is happening on all 4 sides without relying on camera feeds that might malfunction. Modern SUVs prioritized aerodynamics and aesthetics, focusing on interior space and the ability to stack screens on the dashboard, which turned visibility into a secondary concern. The result is pillars thick enough to hide a significant portion of the road from view, and while parents in older cars report they can actually see a child running into the street, parents in modern SUVs report blind spots they cannot overcome, even with backup cameras running. The steering feel tells a similar story of mechanical honesty. In a mechanical system, your hands receive real feedback from the road, allowing you to feel the weight distribution, shifting, and the texture of the asphalt beneath you. You know exactly what the car is doing, because the machine tells you directly through the steering wheel, whereas modern electric steering systems filter that information through computers. The result feels safe but disconnected, leaving the steering numb and making it feel like you are not driving the car so much as requesting the car to drive itself, while you hold the wheel as a formality. The mechanical systems in an older car fail in ways you can actually predict. If a water pump fails, you will hear it happening and see the temperature gauge rising, allowing you to pull over and call a mechanic who can explain exactly what went wrong. Software fails without warning, and often fails silently in ways no one predicted. But a family driving a 1995 Lexus LS400 on a road trip knows exactly what the car is doing at every moment. There are no hidden processes, no subscriptions lapsing in the background, and no updates that disable features without notification. The machine is transparent, meaning every sound it makes and every bit of resistance coming through the wheel carries a specific meaning. The cabin is quiet, not because it is masking engine noise with artificial speakers, but because it was engineered for silence through material choice and structural design. The door handles work the same way they worked 30 years ago. The window switches are mechanical, and the climate control is simple enough that it does not require software to understand. When something breaks, a person with basic tools can fix it, rather than a dealer with proprietary software or an appointment scheduled 3 months from now. It is just a mechanic and the machine, working with the understanding that this object is fixable. This psychological effect compounds within families. Parents report less anxiety in older cars because the machine is transparent and they can actually explain how it works to their children. The machine respects the driver enough to communicate clearly, and that mechanical honesty becomes the foundation of true confidence. Modern luxury creates a dependency on systems you do not understand, But older luxury creates confidence in a machine you can trust. There is a contradiction hiding inside the modern automotive industry that few want to examine. Safety ratings have improved on paper, crash test scores are higher, and airbag counts have multiplied, while computer systems manage variables that would have seemed impossible 30 years ago. And yet families are choosing 30-year-old cars because they actually feel safer driving them. And the data confirms this paradox is not an illusion. Modern crash test ratings measure one specific thing, which is how well a car survives an impact that has already happened. They measure crumple zones, airbag deployment, and how the structure deforms under force, but they do not measure the one thing that matters infinitely more. They do not measure whether the car prevented the accident in the first place. Since a car that does not crash is safer than a car that survives a crash, the testing standards are ignoring the most important factor. The engineering philosophy shifted between generations. A luxury sedan from the 1990s was built on the principle that the best safety feature is avoiding a collision, which made visibility a non-negotiable priority. That led to thin pillars and large windows that allowed a driver to see everything around the car without relying on electronic eyes. Steering geometry was tuned for precision and immediate response, and weight distribution was optimized for stability so the car would not surprise you in an emergency. The older car was engineered preventatively. Modern cars are engineered reactively because they assume collisions will happen and focus entirely on surviving them. That is why visibility became secondary to aerodynamics and interior volume, and why the modern SUV is optimized to absorb an impact after it happens rather than help you avoid it beforehand. Consider a practical test families run without thinking about it. A 3-foot-tall child stands 15 feet in front of a parked 2024 luxury SUV. The driver, sitting in the normal driving position, cannot see that child because the hood is too high and the pillars are too thick. The blind spot is absolute and unavoidable, even with the backup camera running, because cameras fail and they do not show everything. The same child stands 15 feet in front of a 1995 W124 Mercedes. The driver can see the child clearly, without any electronic assistance at all, because the engineering prioritized sightlines over style. This is not about one feature or one advantage. It is the entire design philosophy made visible. The older car wants you to see the world around it, while the newer car assumes you will see through a camera that might malfunction tomorrow. Insurance data reveals what families are discovering in real-world driving. Accident rates for drivers in older luxury cars are measurably lower than accident rates for drivers in modern equivalents. And this is not about driver age or experience. It is about the machine itself, because the older car keeps accidents from happening, while the modern car simply attempts to survive them. Mechanical braking systems demonstrate this difference directly. A 1995 Mercedes brake system responds the moment your foot applies pressure, as fluid flows and pistons engage to hold the car steady. There is no processing and no algorithms deciding how much brake force you actually need. So when a parent must stop suddenly because a child has entered the street, the response is instantaneous. Modern braking systems are computer-mediated, and while they are theoretically smarter at analyzing road conditions, that intelligence introduces latency. It introduces failure modes and the possibility that a software glitch happens at the exact moment you most need to stop. Steering geometry reflects the same priority difference. Older cars tune steering for precision. When your hands move the wheel, the front tires respond immediately and the car follows your intention without delay. Modern cars tune steering for comfort, which makes it feel light at highway speeds and effortless on long drives. But that comfort costs responsiveness. When a parent needs to swerve to avoid an obstacle, a newer car processes that input through layers of electronic assistance, which feels smooth but remains delayed. The older car reacts in real time. Weight distribution and chassis dynamics compound this advantage. A 1990s luxury sedan positioned weight low and centered, which optimized the center of gravity for handling stability and ensured an emergency maneuver would not cause a rollover. Modern sport utility vehicles prioritize interior space, which means the weight and the center of gravity are higher, making the vehicle inherently less stable. An older car remains planted in a panic swerve, but a modern sport utility vehicle might not. Tire technology has improved since the 1990s, but tires alone do not determine handling because chassis dynamics matter more. A 1995 Mercedes equipped with modern tires outperforms a 2024 luxury sport utility vehicle in real-world emergency situations because the older car is planted, responsive, and predictable. Families understand this intuitively before they ever look at the numbers. Insurance companies are noticing the shift as well. Premiums for older luxury cars are dropping, while premiums for new luxury vehicles are climbing, and actuaries have already calculated the risk. Families in older cars get into fewer accidents, and that is not just an opinion, it is mathematics. The financial math behind older luxury cars reveals a reality the modern auto industry would rather you did not examine closely. If you look at a 1995 Mercedes E-Class on the used market today, you can find a clean example for somewhere between $8,000 and $15,000. A 2024 equivalent starts at over $70,000, and while that price gap is massive, it is not the real story. The real story is what happens to your money over the next decade. A new car depreciates at a rate that is essentially designed into its very structure. You can expect 40% of that value to vanish in 5 years, and by year 10, 60% of your investment has simply evaporated. The older car has already finished its descent, meaning it has already absorbed those initial heavy losses for you. When you see a 29-year-old machine sitting in a driveway, it is not getting cheaper because it is failing, but rather it is holding its value because it is still performing. As younger buyers discover the build quality of the 90s, some of these luxury models are actually starting to appreciate. The market recognizes that these cars are becoming rare, and because the poorly made ones have already been scrapped, the ones remaining are the over-engineered survivors meant to last a lifetime. Shift the frame to cost per mile calculations, and the picture changes entirely. A family financing a $70,000 car over 6 years is carrying interest, heavy depreciation, and high insurance costs that compound every single month. That same family could buy a $15,000 1995 Mercedes and carry the purchase price with much lower insurance and maintenance that is both predictable and transparent. Within the first 2 years of ownership, the math usually collapses in favor of the older car. Walk through a basic driveway maintenance scenario, and the difference becomes tangible. An oil change on a 1995 Mercedes takes 20 minutes with a wrench, a drain pan, and a filter. You get under the car, loosen the drain plug, let the old oil run out, wipe the filter, replace it with a new one, and tighten the drain plug. Your hands know what is happening at every step. You can explain it to your kid. You understand the machine because you just maintained it. An oil change on a 2024 luxury car requires a dealer appointment scheduled weeks in advance, proprietary synthetic fluid that costs 4 times what conventional oil does, and computer diagnostics to confirm nothing else is wrong. The bill arrives at $150 or more, and the entire process has been removed from your hands and your understanding. You do not own the maintenance anymore. The manufacturer owns it. Multiply that over thousands of small jobs, and the gap widens into a chasm between true ownership and rental. Parts availability highlights a fundamental difference in how these machines were put together. Because the 1995 Mercedes was produced in the millions, parts suppliers are still aggressively competing for your business today. You can find high-quality brake pads for $80 because dozens of manufacturers make them, and the supply is abundant. On a modern luxury car, a brake pad replacement might cost $400 because the wear sensor is integrated directly into the pad assembly. You are not just buying a friction surface anymore. Instead, you are forced to buy a proprietary system component that often only the dealer stocks. Even a simple oil change illustrates this massive efficiency gap. An older car takes about 20 minutes in a driveway or a local shop, but a modern car often requires a dealer appointment, specialized labor, and proprietary diagnostics. When you add in the proprietary fluid that costs 4 times what conventional oil does, the bill easily hits $150. If you multiply that across years of ownership, the gap between the two vehicles widens into a canyon. Maintenance schedules on older cars are easy to see coming and simple to budget for. A family knows that when the odometer hits 200,000 miles, the water pump might need a look, and perhaps the transmission fluid needs a refresh at 250,000. The schedule is straightforward because the machine itself is straightforward. Modern cars use software diagnostics to generate variable maintenance, which means the car decides when it needs service, and the dealer decides what it will cost. The owner is left to decide if they can afford the bill or if they can risk the warranty implications of saying no. That uncertainty is baked into modern ownership, whereas with an older car, you simply budget for what you know. Extended warranties on new vehicles can cost thousands of dollars up front, yet they often exclude the specific electronic failures that actually happen in the real world. Older cars do not really need these safety nets because they were built with mechanical redundancy. If one small system fails, another often assumes the load, which allows the machine to keep functioning while you arrange for a repair. It will not leave you stranded on the side of the road. The subscription layer on modern vehicles is cost that compounds every month. Features like heated seats, remote start, and navigation now require recurring payments, even though that same navigation came standard and free in a 1995 Lexus. These costs add up quickly, and a family doing the math often finds they are spending $200 or $300 a month on services that a 30-year-old car provides for nothing. Over 20 years of ownership, those subscriptions alone could cost you $60,000 to $80,000. The subscription model changes how we pay for what used to be included. Resale economics are the final piece of the puzzle. A family can drive a 1995 Lexus for a decade and eventually sell it for nearly what they paid for it, essentially enjoying years of free transportation. Meanwhile, a 2024 vehicle sheds 60% of its value before the 5th payment even clears the bank. The older car respects your bank account, while the new car actively consumes it. The case for older luxury is not about being romantic or sentimental. It is a cold, mathematical reality where the numbers simply work. Most people assume that any 30-year-old car is inherently unreliable, and that you are gambling with a machine held together by luck. The actual data contradicts this entirely, because reliability is not about the age of the metal, but rather how the machine was engineered in the first place. Mechanical systems are naturally more reliable than electronic ones, because they fail in predictable ways. A 1995 Mercedes engine has been proven over millions of miles, and many of the ones on the road today are still humming along with 300,000 to 400,000 miles on the clock. They do not suddenly quit because a software update changed a parameter the original engineer did not expect. They simply run until a wear component reaches the end of its life, and then you replace that one part. Modern engines are certainly more efficient, but that efficiency came at a steep price. Most modern engines are designed with a 150,000-mile lifespan in mind, whereas 30 years ago, engineers assumed the car would provide 50 years of service. That shift in priorities changed the entire approach to design and maintenance. The fact that parts suppliers for 90s luxury cars are thriving today tells you everything you need to know. These businesses would not exist if the cars were unreliable, because suppliers only go where demand is high and consistent. The supply chain is robust because millions of these vehicles are still being driven every day and still need basic maintenance to stay on the road. Repair shops often see a side of the story that manufacturers do not advertise. Older luxury cars actually spend less time on the lifts than their modern counterparts, because the diagnostic work is simpler and the repairs are more direct. If a 1995 Mercedes needs a water pump at 200,000 miles, it is a $500 fix. But if a 2024 model needs a transmission at 80,000 miles, you are looking at an $8,000 bill. The older car experiences predictable maintenance, while the newer car can suffer catastrophic failure. One was built to last, and the other was built to be replaced. Families are starting to realize that old does not have to mean broken, and in many cases it actually means proven. Survivorship bias works in favor of these older luxury vehicles because the lemons and the poorly maintained examples are already in the junkyard. The ones still on the road are the over-engineered machines that exceeded every original specification. These were built by people who believed a car should outlast its owner. Rust is a valid concern in colder climates, but modern undercoating and better maintenance habits have neutralized what used to be a fatal weakness. An older car that was cared for will show no significant rot, while a neglected new car can start to rust just as quickly. How a car holds up usually comes down to how it was treated, rather than the year it was made. The electronic components in these older cars are also much simpler and far easier to repair. If a circuit fails in a 1995 Mercedes, a technician can often fix the specific brake. A failed integrated circuit in a modern car is a different story. Those modules cannot be repaired and must be replaced entirely, which becomes a major problem when the part costs thousands of dollars and takes months to ship. A family can keep a 1995 Mercedes running almost indefinitely with nothing more than basic tools and a bit of attention. That same family might be forced to scrap a 2024 model the moment the software becomes obsolete, or a proprietary part fails beyond the point of a sensible repair. Transmission reliability shows this split perfectly. An older Mercedes automatic can easily go 300,000 miles without a major service. Modern transmissions often struggle to hit 100,000 miles. When people choose these older luxury cars, they are not trying to avoid reliability. They are choosing the only machines built with the idea that permanence actually matters. Beyond the mechanics and the mathematics of these machines, a deeper motivation is driving families toward the past. It is a fundamental question of ownership. Modern cars are engineered as data collection hubs, where every trip is tracked, every interaction is logged, and every diagnostic moment is beamed to a corporate server. This is not a conspiracy theory or a bout of paranoia. It is a reality written into the user agreements that almost no one actually reads. The manufacturer knows exactly where you have been, how fast you were traveling, and even how hard you pressed the brake pedal on your way there. Here is what a 2024 luxury car is watching while your family drives. GPS location updated in real time, a complete history of every destination ever visited, how quickly you accelerated and decelerated at each moment, how hard you braked in traffic and whether you were distracted, voice recordings from the cabin that capture private conversations, speed data collected on every road you drive, the exact time you depart and the exact time you arrive, and behavioral patterns that reveal your routine, your habits, and your vulnerabilities. Add in the cabin cameras that are increasingly standard, the microphones listening for voice commands, and the connectivity systems that phone home to servers you will never visit or understand. Your car is not transportation anymore. It is a mobile surveillance device reporting to insurance companies, manufacturers, and potentially law enforcement. Data brokers are already buying and selling this information, and families have almost no control over what happens next. A 1995 Mercedes does not report your location to Stuttgart. It has no idea where you have been, and more importantly, it lacks the hardware to send that information anywhere, even if it did. This creates a sense of true possession that modern vehicles simply cannot offer. You own the machine, and the manufacturer has zero visibility into your life. No data broker is purchasing the history of your family's movements, a distinction that might feel abstract until you realize your car has become a recording device for your private life. A 2024 luxury car is constantly feeding location data and driving patterns back to corporate headquarters. Parents are beginning to worry about what happens when that data is sold, hacked, or used in ways they never agreed to. Insurance companies might use these metrics to hike your rates, or employers could use them to monitor your every move. The older car offers a level of privacy that modern vehicles have deliberately designed out of the experience. This psychological shift goes much deeper than just privacy. Families often report that they feel like they truly own an older car, whereas they feel like they are merely renting a modern one. Manufacturers now retain control through software updates that can change how your features work, or even disable them entirely. They lock basic functions behind recurring subscription payments and maintain remote access that could theoretically shut down the vehicle if a payment is missed. Older cars cannot be remotely disabled, and they certainly cannot be bricked by a bad software update. The machine belongs to you in a way that modern vehicles actively resist. Families value this autonomy, wanting the ability to modify and repair their own property without triggering a warranty void or a software lock. The right to repair has become a rallying cry for those choosing older steel. You can replace the engine in a 1995 Mercedes without ever notifying the factory, but you cannot do the same in a 2024 model without hitting digital locks that refuse to recognize the new hardware. The older car respects the owner, while the modern car respects the corporation. That is the distinction that truly matters to people today. Distraction also plays a massive role in this shift, as modern cars are designed to be entertainment systems first and transportation second. Families are now actively seeking out cabins that do not compete for their attention. The interior of a 1995 Mercedes is a quiet space for conversation, while a 2024 luxury car is a theater of digital engagement, filled with screens, alerts, and constant notifications. Parents find that family road trips feel fundamentally different when the car is not demanding everyone's attention. Everyone is present in the moment. Even the younger generation is starting to notice, with Gen Z buyers looking for older luxury cars for these exact same reasons. This is not just an anti-technology sentiment, but a rejection of technology designed to serve corporate interests instead of human ones. Choosing a 30-year-old luxury car is a statement about permanence, control, and human connection. The families buying these 30-year-old luxury cars are not just being nostalgic, and they certainly are not being cheap. They are making a calculated choice for a machine built to last and a cabin free from the noise of screens and subscriptions. They want ownership that actually carries weight. In a world obsessed with the next new thing, they have discovered that the old way was simply better. Subscribe if you value permanence over planned obsolescence.